including Senator Nina Turner, she headlines our Black History Month lineup. She'll be discussing her campaign in Ohio's 11th Congressional District. We're also honored by labor champion D. Rick Martin, Keith Witherspoon from the American Descendants of Slaves, and Myrtle Beach NAACP leader and ORSC board member Robin Gause. Now this is Alan again, and we're here on a pretty gray afternoon, but we're here to celebrate Black History Month. So as you come into the meeting today, please introduce yourself in the chat with your screen name and the organization you are with. Put questions for the panelists in the Q&A. We have a lot of great guests with us today, including Senator Nina Turner. She headlines our Black History Month lineup, and she'll be discussing her campaign in Ohio's 11th Congressional District. We're also honored to have labor champion D. Rick Martin with us today, and Keith Witherspoon from the American Descendants of Slaves. He's representing the Charlotte area, and Myrtle Beach NAACP leader and ORSC board member Robin Gause. Again, I'm Alan, and this is our February South Carolina webinar celebrating Black History Month. So as you join the meeting, if you would introduce yourself in the chat with your screen name and the organization you are with. You can put questions for the panelists in the Q&A. And I'm going to talk to you about our great guests that we have today. We have Senator Nina Turner. She's going to headline our Black History Month lineup. She'll be discussing her campaign in Ohio's 11th Congressional District. We're also honored by labor champion D. Rick Martin and Keith Witherspoon from Charlotte area American Descendants of Slaves, and Myrtle Beach NAACP leader and ORSC board member Robin Gause. So this is our February meeting here in South Carolina, which is a very gray and wet day today, but it is what it is. So as you join our meeting today, please introduce yourself in the chat with your screen name and the organization you represent. You can put your questions for the panelists in the Q&A, and we will try to get to them. We have a lot of great guests with us here today. Our headliner is Senator Nina Turner. She'll be discussing her campaign in Ohio's 11th Congressional District. We're also honored by labor champion D. Rick Martin. We have Keith Witherspoon from the American Descendants of Slavery, and Myrtle Beach NAACP leader and ORSC board member Robin Gause.
So we should get going, Alan. Maybe move to Lucero.
Okay, let's go to Lucero and kick off our February meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lucero Mesa, co-chair of Our Revolution South Carolina, and I am pleased to welcome all of you to this month's meeting in celebration of Black History Month. We've got so much important work ahead here in South Carolina and around the country. 2020 taught us a lot of things. One of the most important lessons I learned as an activist was that we can never let up on our organizing. Our organizing helped remove Trump from the White House and Biden to win the White House. Yes, and Biden to win the White House. Our organizing helped Democrats elect progressive champions to Congress and take control of the Senate. Now, we got to ramp up our organizing to make sure that we can build on those successes and have a government that truly serves the people. That begins with a COVID stimulus package that includes a permanent stimulus for millions of low-wage workers by raising the minimum wage to $15, and an executive order from President Biden that cancels student debt for millions of borrowers. As Senator Nina Turner says very eloquently, graduate with a degree in one hand and debt in the other. From there, we'll move to Medicare for all and reunification of families separated at the border, comprehensive criminal justice reform, and so much more. Today, we've got a great group of special guests who are doing the work building progressive change. And to celebrate Black History Month, we are going to talk with them about the work that needs to happen to dismantle systemic racism in this country. That begins by recognizing that Black history is American history. Our Revolution South Carolina is firmly committed to tackling social injustices in our state and identifying and working to elect candidates to political office who will fight for policies consistent with our values. We are joined today by Keith Witherspoon with the Queen City American Descendants of Slavery, our Revolution South Carolina's very own, and NAACP Merrill Beach Chair Robin Gause is here. Rick Martin, former UAW President, Local 600, labor law attorney, and a friend of Revolution South Carolina. And by our own former Revolution President, Senator Nina Turner, who is running for US Congress. I can't wait to see her there, a real justice warrior who likes good trouble. Hello, somebody. Before we introduce our special guest, we are going to hear from Hal Ginsberg with our Revolution National about our Revolution membership drive, which is kicking off this month. I encourage everyone to join. Our Revolution National is doing an amazing job and supports our local groups. Welcome, Hal.
All right, thank you so much, Lucero. It is always great to be in South Carolina, and I still remember very, very fondly a couple of years ago when I visited you and the other great board members of the South Carolina Revolution group. So I love being on these calls. I do want to just urge folks, if you're not speaking, to just mute your phone because we are hearing a little bit of background noise and it can be distracting for our many viewers and listeners. It is Black History Month, as we've mentioned, and this call is in honor of African American history. Really, it is a year, of course, because you cannot separate African American history, Black history from American history. They are one and the same. February is also the month of our 2021 membership drive. We do hope you will become a sustaining member for just $5 a month. You can click to ourrev.us/scmem. That's SC for South Carolina, MEM, member. ourrev.us/scmem. That's to make sure our Revolution South Carolina gets the credit. We have our 4-point plan. There's our membership. By the way, that's a beautiful little card you get when you join, and it is by a world-renowned artist, Lauren Rowling, who is one of our leaders in Nashville. So our 4-point plan, I'm going to go through this very, very quickly. First, hold President Biden, Congress accountable. We are already doing that, pushing consistently. Lucero just got a little background there. So hold Congress and Biden accountable, and we agree it is time for boldness, as President Biden has said. And we are seeing results. He has already signed several executive orders, including raising the minimum wage to $15 for federal contract workers. It's not enough. That should be a $15 minimum wage for all Americans. And even that really isn't sufficient. And again, if you do have a little bit of extra and you can give to our revolution, that will help us keep the pressure going as we build our movement. We have elected progressive after progressive. 2020 was our best year. We endorsed, I don't know, 400 or 500 candidates, and about 85% actually won. And those were not just low-hanging fruit, easy wins, but bold progressives like Cori Bush in Missouri. So we're very proud of our record. We're going to continue that in 2021. We had a great rate of wins with our referenda as well. $15 minimum wage in Florida is one of the many that we prevailed. And we're very, very pleased about that. And then one thing I've talked to a lot of members about, and they really want to move the Democratic Party to the left and build a more progressive party, and that's certainly what we are pushing for with the candidates that we endorse and support, with the policies that we support. So just wrap it up real quick before we go to our keynote speaker, our featured guest, Senator Nina Turner. If you can, do become an Our Revolution movement builder, ourrev.us/SCMEM. And with that, let me turn the program over to our moderator, Jessica Bray. Good afternoon, Jessica. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Hal. Thank you for setting us up. And it is an honor for me to be here and speak on behalf of Our Revolution South Carolina and moderate this discussion. Because it is our month. It's Black History Month. And I am excited to talk to community organizers, change makers, and leaders like our Senator Nina Turner. So first up, we have the opportunity to speak to Keith Witherspoon. He is doing a lot of work in our neighboring state up in Charlotte. Keith Witherspoon is a social media manager with the Queen City American Descendants of Slavery. He will be talking to us a little bit more about a project that he is working on. So Keith, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Keith Witherspoon. I'm social media manager for American Descendants of Slavery. Um, Basically, our sorry, this is the first time doing this. Basically, our organization was started in September of last year, 2020. During our pandemic. And basically, we just wanted to have a um, together and actually, from people in Charlotte. Um, so for the past 6 months, we've just been doing the basic groundwork, mostly through social media because of COVID-19, and we're just doing the best. We had our first event, Zoom event, last week. So I was really nervous doing that. So we'll have the video up for that pretty soon. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it as far as the bio. Or as for who what I'm talking about, I'm going to be talking about Brooklyn Village, which is a really sorry, I think they go up. Basically, it was a place in Charlotte that's now basically been fully gentrified, but it's basically a place that people came to after emancipation. Free slaves came to Charlotte to and basically built their own city out of a log town, and yeah, and many free slaves and family went there, built their own neighborhood, and basically throughout decades, the North Carolina government, even with the assistance of the federal government, basically displaced pretty much all of them. And now you get the Charlotte you have today. Um, the 1910s, the thing about it is like while Black people were actually fleeing the South to go, outside the South because white violence stuff like that. 1910s, the white business elite who actually wanted to keep the impoverished people there in like that really low wage workforce, but they didn't want to Because if there was just white people there, then they had to actually pay them an actual wage. But they wanted the low wage work there, so they actually helped black people build Brooklyn so they can keep that low wage work. And during that time, basically Brooklyn became the mecca for black people just in general in Charlotte. They had schools, they had economic opportunities that they really couldn't get anywhere else. They had YMCA, they had libraries, and that's all this in spite of segregation. And their first school was actually Myers Street School, which was founded in 1882 and was Charlotte's first black public school. And later on in 1923, and this was after white people had their first high school, they had their second ward high school. And that opened and became the heartbeat of the neighborhood. And of course, we still have AME, Zion Baptist Church here, and that's one of the markets you can tell that was from Brooklyn. I mean, that was one of the original places in Brooklyn. And they actually had their own publishing house that were publishing monthly newspapers. And it was also one of the few jobs, if you worked there as a black man, it was one of the few jobs you can get that was actually white collar. So it was a really huge job market there. We had Mecklenburg Investment Company, which was building Brevard Street, was the first professional office building for black people. Let's see. And after the 1900s, they created Main Street. But if you look at Stonewall Street, that was it was the Savoy, which was a theater. Um, but yeah, the theater there was called the Savoy. But now if you look there, it's now a condo called the Savoy. But it's like a high end condo that black people really can't like live in because it's just too high. It's just too high. So it's kind of, but they kind of like made it to like pay homage to the Savoy Theater, but it's like, are you really paying homage to it if like people can't even live there? So that's kind of one of the funny thing about that. But in 1958, the Charlotte Mecklenburg Planning Commission did a study to find blighted areas and for urban renewal in black, which was basically black removal. They were trying to remove black people from Brooklyn. They can basically do what they wanted with that. But of course, they found poor housing, poor infrastructure standards, and but all this was due to lack of funding. Like people really didn't make a whole lot of money, and the few people that did make money, they basically ignored all that, and despite all that, they still had pretty much thriving businesses. Like they didn't have a whole lot, but what they did have, they tried to take care of and did the best they could with what they were allowed to have at the time. And but let's see, but the neighborhood was also it was a pretty good neighborhood as far as the people that were there. Like in one interview, there was a resident named Connie Patton. She kind of like reminisced in the interview, but like she said that Brooklyn was the best place in the world to live. You really don't have to go out of Brooklyn for anything. Everything was right there. Social life, everything right there. They didn't have many businesses way out, so we could walk to work. Everything was downtown. Another former resident named Barbara Steele, she said that we never had keys to our houses. Everybody left their doors open. Um, a skeleton key would fit everybody's door in Brooklyn, and everybody knew everybody. And we went to each other's homes. And if you were at my house, we would got ready to eat. My mom sat a place on the table for you to eat. I went to your house and eat. Uh, Basically, like everybody was very communal. People could go to each other's houses. They didn't really have to worry about a whole lot of crime, even though everybody didn't have a whole lot. Uh, just a communal atmosphere, everyone at least working together to get their needs met was basically all they needed. And really, if they just had the time to just develop their neighborhoods, they would have been fine. But of course, um, the white powers that be, they didn't care about any of that. They wanted the land, and when white elites want what they want, they do whatever they need to do to do it. So much so they got the federal government to grant them 1.4 trillion. I'm sorry, 1.4 million to clear 33 acres of slum area and relocate 250 families and small businesses. And the residents weren't really involved in that. And there was a really prominent NAACP member, shout out to NAACP, Kelly Alexander. Um, he was pretty much one of the major advocates for Black Charlotteans at the time. And yeah, they just weren't involved in any of it. He wrote all kinds of like prominent uh, basically officials and public institutions just to get them to do something about it. Of course, they all ignored them. And basically, that was being shuffled from one slum to another. They tried to make it seem like they were trying to get people and give with urban renewal, they kind of sold a lie. They did a whole bunch of propaganda, basically trying to make it seem like they're trying to make the Black neighborhood better. But really, they weren't interested in making them better. They just needed Black people out of the way. Just so that way they wouldn't seem like they're bad people for doing what they were doing. But they just didn't really care about the people. But between 1960 and 1967, there were no residential unit. But basically when they were also all said and done, they were saying that they were going to use it they were trying to renew it for light industrial, commercial, and office, and they even built a city hall there. But there were no residential areas, no residential units at all by the time everything was said and done. Pretty much
So,
everyone.
Keith,
Sorry.
yeah, Keith, just quick. I think you picked up, and thank you so much for sharing all that information. Two interesting points that I just listening and hearing all about the Brooklyn project, which is very significant, or it's very reflective of a lot that's going on here in South Carolina, especially in areas like Charleston, um, downtown Charleston, which has gone through its gentrification period and it's
Mm-hmm.
continuing to go through that, even down to Greenville and other parts of South Carolina. I think it was interesting, two interesting points, or interesting, but two things that kind of that when these communities were allowed to manage themselves, the safety factor was drastically different.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think that's very, very important to say because some of the stigmas, especially in the African American community, is even though if you have, especially when you have low wage, people
Mm-hmm.
earning low wages, the stigma is that we're going to have high crime and whenever there's high poverty.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, you want to talk a little bit about that, right?
Yeah.
And
Well.
then, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so yeah,
That
that
sounds
was
very.
important. I'm sorry, I got feedback.
I'm sorry.
So, what is the most important issue you believe needs to be addressed to improve African American lives?
We're getting a lot
Repeat
of.
that question.
I'm sorry, we're getting so much feedback. Sorry to jump in. This is Hal. Yeah, real quick, Keith, we don't have a lot of time, but what would you say could be done now to bring the situation maybe back to the way it was, when Brooklyn was the place to be?
Oh yeah. Well, that will be reparations. That's what all this comes down to is basically we need reparations. We need we need cash infusions into Black communities. It obviously is not possible to make Brooklyn come back, even though they're trying to do like some kind of Brooklyn Village renewal kind of plan, but that's simply not possible. But Black people just need actual like investment in their own communities, We need, of course, we need the federal government to invest in it, since they also help Charlotte remove Black people. They need to we need federal dollars to reinvest into Black communities, so they can so we can create the communities institution that we want, that we find useful to us, so we can build the communities that we want.
All right. Thank you, Keith. Thank you so much for sharing the information and participating with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
I really enjoyed the information. And if you're interested in learning any more information, the links have been dropped in the chat box. So next up, we have the honor to speak to somebody with deep, deep, deep roots in South Carolina. It is Mr. Rick Martin, who at the age of 20 won his first union office. Among many other success, he went on to complete 3 consecutive terms as the president of the United Automotive Workers Local 600. He received a law degree from the University of Michigan and has been practicing labor law since then. Mr. Martin has ties to the South Carolina, like I said, and he is the great, great, great grandson of Moses Martin, who is one of the progressive and fearless senators of the Black majority from the South Carolina legislature in 1868 to 1872. Moses Martin also built the first African American AME church in Fairfield County, and in 1886, which was built in 1868 and is still standing today with its doors open. Mr. Martin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, sister? Right.
Yes, I can. We have a little bit of feedback, but I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the very, very kind introduction. And thank you for all the work that you do in moderating.
Hold on 1 second. 1 second. We're getting some feedback. So maybe we have to mute somebody. So please, if you're not speaking, please mute your phone.
No?
That seems to be okay, Rick. Let's try it.
Okay. Is there a lot of feedback now?
It's not great. We'll do the best we can. If you can try it, if you can go.
First, I'd like to thank our revolution for all the good work that every one of your volunteers do. And of course, the big thank goes to, we need to call him now Chairman Senator Sanders, for having the vision to start this organization. He realized that without unity, there's no power. And that unity must be the working class, black, white, brown, red.
We just lost Rick completely, and it's really unfortunate because his words are so powerful. We must have unity across the working class. Are you there, Rick?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. I started studying the radical South Carolina legislature when I found out that my great grandfather, Moses Martin, was a brave member, along with all the other former slaves that served in that legislature. And what I found out is that they had the wisdom to know that it's about white and black unity not retribution. Because they realize that the enemy is not each other in the working class. It is the ruling class. It is the plantation owners, which today is the oligarchs. So there are tremendous and striking parallels between 1867 and today. In 1867, the South had nothing, which means white and black were all poor. Former slaves and the white farmers. What did they do? They united. That's how we have the radical South Carolina legislature, which is the first and only black majority legislature that this country has ever seen. And unfortunately, probably never will again. But they gave us something. Something that stands today. Instead of the black majority looking for retribution, they sought unity and united with the white legislators, legislators, I should say, and created the most progressive state constitution in the history of this country. That constitution first got rid of the black codes. It also said that all children would have public free education. The blind would be educated, as well as the deaf. It also is the only constitution that gave women any rights. Two of those rights were the right to own property and the right to divorce a man you no longer love. It also said House of Representatives will be determined not on the wealth, but on population. This gave all the working class, black and white, power they never had before. It also, and this is what really relates today. This is what Chairman Sanders has been talking about for 50 years. Let's just say all of his adult life. You have to make the ruling class with all the wealth pay their fair share. So what did the black, radical South Carolina legislature do? In unity with the white brothers and sisters, they passed a law that made the former plantation owners, well, I should say former slave owners, rich, wealthy slave owners, pay a higher tax. And that tax will be used to help the poor black and white farmers. That is what the chairman is talking about today. When we talk about the gross income inequality in this country. Are we not back to the same as it was in 1867? In the last 40 years, $21 trillion has been stolen from the workers and went straight to the top. And what did the working class get? We, the working class, lost $900 billion. That's why we have this such a depressing society that we have today. Everybody is struggling. Martin Luther King in 1863, in the I Have a Dream speech, I remember this, when he said, Black people have been exiled on a lonely island of poverty, surrounded by a vast ocean of material prosperity. But the funny thing is that is the situation right now. Only on that island of poverty is not just black, but it's the white. It is the working class, black and white together on that island of poverty. We have no choice but to unite. Follow the lessons and the traditions of the South Carolina legislature. And to identify them, we have to say the radical South Carolina legislature. So, what led me to become a lawyer? Because this is also supposed to be about criminal justice and criminal justice reform. Well, when I was in the projects in the city of Detroit, we used to see blacks getting picked up, thrown in a police car, charged for a crime they did not commit because the white police department wanted to be able to check off, we stopped that crime. They didn't care what black person they picked up. And when that person has to face the charge and have no money and can't afford a lawyer, the judge says, don't worry. If you're poor, we will appoint a lawyer for you. You'll have a court-appointed lawyer. But there's a lot of problems with that. And I don't blame the lawyer. The court-appointed lawyer is not paid much money. So the court-appointed lawyer is motivated to get the person to plead guilty to something they didn't do because the court-appointed lawyer just doesn't have time and the resources to go to trial and fight for the innocent. So the court-appointed lawyer tells the poor black man, listen, this is a hanging judge. I got a deal for you. The prosecutor said if you plead guilty, he'll only give you 2 years. But if you go to trial and lose, you're going to get 10. So the first thing the black man does is check his pockets and say, no, I'm not going to plead guilty to something I didn't do. And then he digs down in his pocket and see he has no money. And he holds his head up and says, okay. So now he goes to jail for something he didn't do. While he's there, he's determined to keep the same values that he had when he went in. I am not going to become a criminal. Even though he's surrounded by those who are telling him, look what they did to you. You need to join my gang, or you need to join this. He says, no. When I come out, I'm going to go straight. The only problem is that when he comes out, and he goes looking for a job, He has to put down, yes, I've been convicted, which means no job. He goes place to place looking, determined not to become a criminal, not to get involved in criminal enterprises. But he has to feed his family. And at some point, he says, he calls the brother that was in jail, and he says, okay. So now what has society done? Taken an innocent, law-abiding citizen and turned him into a criminal in order to survive. That motivated me and inspired me to become a lawyer, to do what I could to try to make sure that that doesn't happen to anyone. Sadly, it continues today because of the system that we are living in. It's a racist, capitalist system. So that continues. Now, a lot of people talk about and have trouble with the phrase Black Lives Matter. Well, there's a reason for that phrase. Because Black people have been treated like their lives didn't matter. Others might say, some of our white brothers, well, all lives matter. I would say I agree. That's why we got to fight for Black lives to matter. Because if Black lives matter, you don't have to worry about the police department. Now, some say, how do we change that police department? And there's a lot of good ideas out there from the movements that sprung from all the police brutality killings of not just Blacks, but even some of our white brothers and sisters. And what we learned is that it's not about training. Every time you have a person who is killed that should not have been killed, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, Brother Crawford.
Hey, Mr. Mark,
Yes.
can you hear me? Yes, thank you so much for everything that you said. Due to the sake of time, we do have Senator Turner on. We only have a brief moment with her. So we want to make sure we give her the opportunity to speak really quickly because she has other engagements. So.
Oh, please let the speak.
So thank you again. Thank you so much for sharing all that information. It was powerful, everything that you said. If we have, while we have her again, thank you so much, Senator Turner, for giving us this opportunity to speak with you. I have the great opportunity of introducing her. Senator Turner is like a mother to all the staffers and everybody from the Bernie Sanders campaign. She has invested so much into South Carolina, built grassroots coalitions, has been all over South Carolina from the rural areas to Greenville, all over. So we really appreciate a brief moment of her time today. Senator Turner, are you there?
I am.
Hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much. And I really, we got our wires crossed a little bit. I've been here since the very beginning and I do have to jump. So we should arrange for me to come back to speak to our Revolution South Carolina. I love you guys so much. You all know that. And Jessica, thank you and the rest of the South Carolina team for the magnificent work that you did on Sanders' 2020 campaign. We may not have had the outcome, obviously, that we wanted, but we covered lots of ground. We changed lives and minds, and it is because of the fight of the progressive movement, the liberators of the 21st century, that issues like the $15 an hour minimum wage, canceling student debt, universal health care, and on is part of the conversation. It is because of the courage of that movement. And I say 21st century version because there have always been progressives in our midst. I argue that the Black community is the original progressives. I got to shout out. I heard what Brother Keith had to say. As I've enjoyed. I've been on since the beginning, enjoying the speeches. Brother Keith Witherspoon was giving the history and laying it down, and then Brother Rick Martin. I mean, I could listen to him all day long give that history about the radical legislature of South Carolina. Hello, somebody. Really adore him very, very much. To fight him and his family and keeping this story alive about how vibrant and progressive South Carolina actually was when that legislature was majority African American. And the fact that even then they understood that we are tied together, as Brother Martin laid out, that we are linked together, that the struggle and the history of African Americans is America's history, and that we must lock arms in brotherhood and sisterhood, whether we are Black, whether we are white, whether we are Hispanic, whether we are gay, whether we are straight, whether we are atheist, Christian, Muslim, you name it. However people identify, we got to be together. I'm gonna put a however on that too, and address what Brother Keith Witherspoon laid out. You know, the whole notion of reparations is about repair. That it serves to acknowledge a legal obligation. In this country, my God, has a legal obligation to its Black citizens, particularly the citizens who are the descendants of enslaved folks, and it has yet to pay that debt. I quite frankly don't believe that this country ever can pay the debt. You cannot pay for 400 years, but you ought to put a down payment on it, and that down payment is part of reparations. I want to get a hello somebody on that. I got to shout out Congressman John Conyers, even in his death, because he, since the 1980s, has been pushing House Bill HR 40 to just even start the study of this thing so that we can figure out how this country can begin to try to pay back the debt. Because this debt's so heavy, America would bounce. Can I get a hello somebody on that?
Hello, somebody.
Somebody.
Brother Witherspoon and Brother Martin are both right. Both things can be true all at once. Man, and let me just, South Carolina leadership, thank you so much. I was listening to Hal. Like I said, I've been here from the beginning. And to my dear sister, Losario Mesa, just sending lots of love to you. And the entire Our Revolution South Carolina team, you guys mean a lot to me. I've had the pleasure and the privilege to travel this country over the last almost 6 years. And I tell you something, I have lived in South Carolina, sure enough lived in South Carolina. Even before I was back on the presidential campaign, I visited South Carolina many times as the president of Our Revolution. Our Revolution itself, Our Revolution South Carolina, and all of the chapters across this country, you guys give me so much joy because you are organizing and you are lifting and you are prodding and you are pushing. And it is indeed a joy to see the seeds and the fruits of the labor of Our Revolution, and to not look. Now, I'm not just sitting back, but to know that I've been a part of building such a tremendous movement that is going to have impact for generations gives me such joy. So I adore you guys. Between Brother Witherspoon and Brother Martin, you guys got it. I just want to just kind of go back just a little bit, that just to remind you, Black history is America's history. America wouldn't be the nation that it is today without
Oh, we lost you, Senator. A lot of feedback.
on its back. This is America's history. So in 1926, Hal, you hearing feedback from me?
We dropped for a minute, but you're perfect now, Senator. Thank you.
Oh, okay. No, let me know. In 1926, Carter G. Woodson, and many of you may know that name, Dr. Carter G. Woodson started the Negro History Week. Actually, he had been working on this since like 1915 or so. So the whole notion of Black History Month starting off as Negro History Week, it wasn't new. I mean, you had Black people and particularly Black academics, whether it was Dr. W.B. Du Bois and others, really pushing up and bubbling up the fact that the history of Black folks must be understood in a deep way, that it is bigger than the shackles and the chains, that these descendants of enslaved people came from somewhere, and how do you honor both that history and their journey, their forced journey to the Americas. And when we think about and talk about the Americas, we're talking about North America, we're talking about the Caribbean, we're talking about South America. It is not just North America. Less than 5% of enslaved people even came to North America, baby. We're talking about the Middle Passage. And so it is important to understand that Black people as a whole occupy a space in what is called the Black diaspora. So that's our Jamaican sisters and brothers. That's our Haitian sisters and brothers. Hello, somebody. It's a Black diaspora. But the ancestors who came, who were enslaved in North America on these shores, there was a little under 400,000 of them that came from the continent of Africa here, forced. I keep saying the word forced, because when we talk about immigration, we must take out and recognize separately the forced trafficking in human beings from the continent of Africa. Can I get a hello somebody on that? So,
Hello, somebody.
This thing is big. It's bigger than we have the opportunity to talk about today. But thank God for visionaries like Dr. Carter G. Woodson. I want to recommend that you read one of his books, The Miseducation of the Negro. It's a powerful book. It is a classic. It is not a long book. And I encourage all of my sisters and brothers to read that book. It is still relevant to this day. Unfortunately, it is still relevant to this day, but it is a very good book. And so we went from Negro History Week in the 1920s to Black History Month. Again, Black people working very hard to make sure both as a culture, we understood our magnificent history and all that we have added to these United States of America, and also wanting other people in this country to understand it and to appreciate it and to uplift it. And so we moved to Black History Month. And Black History Month was first recognized by President, I believe it was President Gerald Ford in 1976. So here we are today in the 21st century, continuing this magnificent tradition of recognizing the legacy and the, I want to say the lives and the legacy of Black people in America, in North America. And it is magnificent indeed. Again, America wouldn't be what it is today without Black people. With that, I want to give a quote that has been on my mind. And then Sister Jessica, I'm gonna turn it back to you. I know you guys have a couple of questions for me. I only can do one of those questions because I'm all off schedule because of the, you guys didn't know that I was here, and that's okay. I definitely promise to you that I am going to come back. And I salute you guys for taking this moment to recognize the history of Black people. And it's our shackles and chains and the journey, the painful journey that our ancestors had to endure is just but one part of our magnificent history. But lest we forget, we must never forget what was done to Black people on this continent, in this country, even before it was a country, what was done to our ancestors and how it lingers even to this day in terms of inequality. And it is one of the reasons, many reasons, why we must continue to fight until freedom is truly won. It has not been truly won. We've made some progress, baby, but it has not been truly won. And we must continue to fight. And we need all our sisters and brothers to fight with us. As my brother Michael Render always says, we need allies and we need co-conspirators. We need allies and co-conspirators. Co-conspirators go a little deeper than allies. We need allies and co-conspirators because, as Brother Martin said, we definitely are all in this together. We can do both. So this quote is coming from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and this is something that really encapsulizes my campaign. The first quote comes from Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. What the people want is very simple. They want an America as good as its promise. They, meaning all of us, no matter our backgrounds, we want an America as good as its promise. Many of you heard me quote those words from the great Congresswoman Barbara Jordan along the campaign trail. And the second one is this: power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. Sisters and brothers, if you don't remember anything else I've had to say here this afternoon, I want you to understand this: that power without love is reckless, and love without power is sentimental. That we need both love and power. That is what the radical legislature in South Carolina had. That is it. And that is an example of what we must get back to this day. We must have both love and concert to push for justice, to make a demand. And pushing for justice is messy. Pushing for justice is not pretty. Making a demand is not pretty all the time. And but for people with courage making a demand, Black people would not be where we are today, even though we have many more miles to go. Without people pushing against the status quo, women in this country would not have the right to vote. Can I get a hello, somebody? Without people pushing against the status quo. So when folks bemoan marches in the streets, when people bemoan the rising up, the righteous rising up of people making a demand, something is wrong with them. Because think of any great strides that we have made in this country, from labor laws to child labor laws to Black people getting the right to vote. You name it, women's rights, you name it, the rights of our gay, lesbian, transgender sisters and brothers. You name any right in this country that we have gained, and it has come by people pushing against the status quo and baby making a demand. And there's nothing wrong with making a demand. So I implore conscious-minded people from all walks of life that we stand together in justice, and that we continue to make a demand, and that we push the power with love. South Carolina, I love you. Hello, somebody.
Hello, somebody. Senator Turner, you have actually hit on all the questions and everything that we wanted to talk about.
Jessica, you are mute.
No, we got her, Lucero.
Okay. Okay.
I thank you so much for speaking to us. You spoke, as always, you did a great job. You spoke truth to power, and we need to work on this love and power. So thank you again, Senator Turner, for joining us.
Amen. Thank you, Sister Jessica. I love you guys so very much, and I cannot wait till I can get back to the great state of South Carolina.
Yes. All right. So next up, we have the opportunity to speak to a South Carolina native to close us out for tonight, this afternoon. We have Robin Gause. She is a registered nurse and an Our Revolution South Carolina board member representing the U.S. Congressional District 7. As a vice chair, she is a policy council president for Horry County Head Start and the NAACP chair for Myrtle Beach County. Miss Robin, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Hi. Can you tell
Yes.
us about yourself?
First of all, greetings to everyone that's on the line, and greetings to our evolution for having me on this panel today. Briefly, I'm a mother of six and a grandmother of 16. Um, I'm in the field of midwifery, which means to deliver babies at home and at the birthing center. And I'm also a community activist as well as a political activist also. So I thank you so much for having me today. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today, which concerns us today as African Americans, is our right to vote. Um, I'm going to take you back in time a little bit as to how the Voting Act came about. It was signed into law in 1965 by Lyndon B. Johnson. And also, the 15th Amendment had guaranteed the African Americans the right to vote. Now, back in the 1960s, some of you might remember That law was not enforced too much. It was ignored by some states, especially in the state, the southern states like South Carolina. What they did in the 1950s and 60s, and is still doing today, but not exactly like what I'm going to tell you about. But I'm going to give you some examples of the things that they did back then to stop the African American vote. One of the things that they did was they required a literacy test, regardless of whether you had a college degree or not, you had to take that test. They required for you to know the Constitution. My grandmother was born in 1909 and went through that era, and she told me sometimes that they would even have you count the pennies in the jar. Now, how would we know the pennies that's in the jar? If you could not count the pennies that was in the jar, you did not come and register to vote. They would also, uh, when you filled out an application, they would say that you had the wrong date or you didn't fill it out right. So those were some of the things that they tried to come up to stop the vote, to stop us to vote. But we also know, like Martin Luther King, March 7th, 1965, led the Selma March to Montgomery. We all know from videos, and for some people being, still living in this time, that how much violence it, you know, was met by that. What it has to do with us now is we're still fighting for the right to vote. Um, the Voting Right Act of 1965 was amended in 1970 and 1975 to include non-English speaking people also. But we, as of Americans today, we have to unite to make sure that we have our right to vote. The right to vote can change our communities for the better. They know that those that don't want us to vote or don't want the non-English people to vote or the white people that are in those categories to vote either, because they know that their political seats will be taken. Those same ideas that was in the 50s and 60s still run through us today. We still have those things to fight against. Me, by being a political activist, I saw on both sides the trouble that we would have trying to vote, even in this day and time of 2020, 21. We still be turned away from the uh, voting poll places where we go to vote. And some of the things that they wanted us to have were like our driver's license, birth certificates, marriage license, all types of things. And we still have that problem. We still need to uh, fight for that privilege to vote because it wasn't allowed back in the 1950s and the 1960s, and is trying to not be allowed in this day and time also. So what we should do is we should unite together and fight back to make sure that our voices are heard. Our revolution is one of the organizations that are is doing that to help each and every uh, group of people to come out and to vote and make sure they come out to vote safely, make sure that their voices are heard. So we need to, and I keep saying we need to unite, is because it's very important because we have elections coming up. We also have the election of our very own Senator Nina Turner that we can help with. Even when we live in South Carolina, we still can help her achieve what she's trying to achieve because we need to put people in office that's going to stand for everyone, for each community, equality. We need to put those people in office. And one way to do that is to make sure that we show up at the voting polls. So I thank you
Yes.
for having me. Any questions that you want to ask?
I don't really have a question, or it's more like a statement because you did hit on some important points on voter suppression, and I think not a in 2020, especially as we came into the general election, there was so much ambiguity around our election that kind of made it tough because we were transitioning to a different method. They were the signature requirements going back and forth. In the beginning of September, they said no signature requirements, and then days before in-person absentee voting, they switched it up. So it's really, you're absolutely correct. We have to work on the educational component and ensuring that more people are educated and supported in voting. Thank you, Ms. Gause.
You're welcome.
All right. So I am going to turn it over. I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing so much good information. And I'm glad that we were able to work through several different kinks, but we had a great, well-rounded, informational meeting today. So thank you all. Thank you, Senator Turner. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Keith. And thank you, Miss Robin. Now I'm handing it over to Hal.
All right. Thank you so much, Jessica, for doing a great job moderating with some technical issues. And we've got a bunch more, but we're already past the hour. So I'm going to try to be very, very brief. I do want to just say it really is in the end, and we had great, great guests today. And I'm sorry that Ms. Robin Gause didn't get a little more time. I would have loved to have heard more from her. D. Rick Martin, very, very powerful speaker. And I'm so interested in the American descendants of slavery, Keith Witherspoon's organization. I got to say this, you guys are all great. In the end, it is about Nina. It's about electing Senator Nina Turner to Congress. This is really how we can make change. Everything we do at Our Revolution is about putting progressives. It's about putting champions of racial equity. It's about electing champions of economic justice. You heard D. Rick Martin speak so eloquently about the need for economic justice in our nation. It's about ending the systemic racism that guest Robin Gause discussed. And the way we do that is by electing Senator Nina Turner to Congress. If you can, please phone bank to help elect Senator Nina Turner. We do have the rrev.us/call for Nina. We are asking folks to tell Biden to sign with workers and to become a sustaining member. And of course, that's the SCMEM link. Real quick, we again, the movement builder, SCMEM, after rrev.us/ and then SCMEM. But it is, there she is, Senator Nina Turner, rrev.us, call for Nina. Cancel student debt. We've got great calls coming up later tonight from Wisconsin, Economic Justice Town Hall. And Rick Martin, of course, was discussing how important it is we side with workers. Our Monday night calls are always great this Monday at 8:30, as they are every Monday. We've got a meeting from Florida on Tuesday. I'll be hosting the meeting from D.C. Should be really exciting. I'm hosting it. I'll be backing it. And we're talking about statehood. And that, of course, is another issue dear to Senator Nina Turner's heart. She did live in our region. She knows how important that is. And she has been a champion of statehood, true economic, true racial justice for the residents of the District of Columbia. And then Oregon will round out our upcoming calls on Wednesday. So that brings us to the end of the call. Thank you all so much for being part of this. We'll chant real quick. I'll say when we organize. If you want to unmute now, you can respond with "We Win" at South Carolina, so you know the call and response. I'll say when we organize. You say "We Win" on 3. When we organize, we win. When we organize, we win. When we organize, we win. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much.